Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be able to be here with you, kicking off another week. In this pandemic time, COVID-19, we have the Hispanic Response and Recovery Plan as a platform to be able to mitigate the impact of COVID in our community, the Hispanic community that, as we know, has been disproportionately affected by COVID, not only at the health level with the highest mortality rates that, that COVID has had in this country, at the economic level, where our small businesses, entrepreneurs, and independent workers that have been affected the most because we work in those industries that have been shut down completely, the restaurants, the hotels, but also we're disproportionately exposed by being there in the front lines, running the country, being 19 million Hispanics in essential functions, in food supply, in food delivery, in food supply. And we need to make sure that we elevate that issue so that everybody knows that, so that we can adequately provide solutions so that our Hispanic community is protected. And we do these daily webinars as a way for us to be informed, to be able to share that with our members, but also to be informed to take better decisions, to know what's important for our community. What are the things that we need to know, learn, and be enlightened about so that we can take action. And in that front, it is absolutely important that we will be discussing how are we going to be bridging the digital divide that we have, particularly for the Hispanic community in a year where civic engagement is more important than ever, in a year of election. And for that, Lili Gangas, the Chief Technology Community Officer of the Kapor Center, and Christian Arana, the Vice President of Policy at the Latino Community Foundation, are here today, and I'm very grateful. Lili, I'm a fan of yours. You've been, part of what we have done from the very beginning of World Human. We admire the strategic mindset that you have at the Kapor Center, and how, how you really committed to the Hispanic community. So overnight, Lili, we have become a digital-first country. However, we know that a disproportionate number of Latinx community members have been left behind, really left behind now. Lili, what's the current state of the digital divide in our community?
Sure, thank you so much, and excited to be here to discuss a very, 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 very important topic. I think being able to see overnight, as you mentioned, how we become a digital first, but that means that you needed to have the resources such as broadband access, devices, laptops, and also being able to have a sense of digital skills to be able to participate in what is now a work from home world first, right? And we know that the statistics have been coming out that a lot of our community members don't have that opportunity. Most of the Latinos who are actually out in the workforce many of them are essential workers who don't have that option. But what's actually even more concerning is the level of education and the gaps that are going to be created for also the future and the youth. Just to give you a sense of stats, we have over, just here in where I reside here in Oakland, we have over 25,000 students who currently are not even connected to broadband access or don't have a device, or the connection's not fast enough, but yet their schools have gone digital first, right? And so what does that mean for them? That means that they're not being able to learn at the pace that they should. They're going to be falling behind. But this is a huge issue, not just in Oakland, not just in California, but across the U.S. The digital divide has been an issue since I went to college, and it's one of these issues that we have to tackle this year. If COVID has showed us anything, that the importance of investment in infrastructure, systems thinking, systems investing is critical for these types of issues, so then that way we can resolve them. Specifically in the Latinx community, and this is where the census data is super critical, why we're here to also discuss that, is that we also are seeing that when like just an example here in Fruitvale, where we have some zip codes that vary from 20 to 40% of households that are not even connected to broadband. Some of them don't even have any access. So how are they getting information? If you're a small business owner and you didn't have a digital plan or digital strategy for your business, what happens now, right? If you're the student who is in the midst of filling out the FAFSA and now you don't have access that you were used to having at school, you don't have it at your local coffee shop, you don't have it at home, how are you supposed to be participating? And so these are really, really critical issues that living here in the US, we should be able to resolve them. And I think that this is the time. I think this should be not only a local, but a state and national priority, that we're able to provide high-speed broadband access for all that's affordable. We need to be able to provide not just devices, but future-proof devices. We need to invest in more digital scale building. A stat that we should also be mindful of is specifically as we go into more automation, COVID has really just accelerated a lot of the equity gaps we've been seeing for years. These are systemic structural issues. And as we start to go into with what a post-COVID world may look like, when a lot of the essential workers, such as cashiers and front ends, where those types of jobs are going to be automated. Is COVID going to accelerate that? Are those jobs going to disappear in the future? What's the plan for upskilling? And so I think that there's a lot of different issues that are at the table, from the basic access to education, basic access to digital upskilling, but also what is it going to look like for businesses to become and survive in this digital first world?
I want to ask you, so we know that 44, part of what we're trying to do is bring the data, bring the meat. What's the substance? What are we talking about? What's the problem? So that we can address it. So here's really important data that we have found that is absolutely scary. 16%, only 16% of Hispanics are equipped to be educated at home or working from home, meaning they don't have internet, they don't have the equipment, they don't have 16%. So when we're talking about stay home for those that can. But for a large part of our community, it's not an option. We can't afford it, or we're not equipped. So what's the solution there? Data number two is 44% of our Hispanic community is in denial about COVID. Is that because we have a lack of information that reaches us because we're not, or is it language? Is it the lack of, the lack of information and the lack of information in language? And number three, I was absolutely blown away by this stat. About 117 brands are communicating to the public, to their consumers, about COVID. Only 13 of them are targeting the Hispanic community, let alone in language, just targeting the Hispanic community. So in general, it's not only that we don't have a lot of information, we're not equipped, and we're not in a position financially to leave that. What's that looking like, and how is Kapor Center looking at that piece? Is that a policy action? Is it a corporate activation action? What is in your mind about that?
Sure, I would say that is three main things. Definitely, we need systems change, but it has to be policy. I think what's challenging, especially with the access to high broadband access, is that city and states and federal, we all need to get on the same plan, right? And so we need to have a strategy. And so I would say policy, long-term, both state and federal. The second part that you mentioned is critical, which is partnerships. And this is where the third one is funding. And these all come together. And so, for example, California, the governor's office here in California launched a task force that brought over, I would say, 20 different tech companies who are providing different types of resources, whether it's direct funding for this issue, or it's providing direct devices, or is it providing other types of services. And I would say that we need all three at all levels and a higher urgency that we've seen before, because this is going to take large levels of investment. Just in Oakland, just to close the digital divide for this year for 25,000 students, we need over $12.5 million just this year. When we take a look at the cities that are not even served in the rural areas, like the Central Valley, or even other parts of the U.S., we're talking about a significant amount of investing, and it's going to require everybody, starting with policy, to be able to get the funding from the federal level to be able to properly distribute it and invest in all these cities, and zip code by zip code. We know that a lot of the times in the past, there's been a lot of issues with some of the providers that are also not providing the solutions, which has been that there's been not enough competition. Some of the pricing has been unaffordable, especially when we take a look at the zip codes where the cost of living is a little bit higher than the others. It's not by accident that some of the higher earning income cities have better access and some don't. And so the question is, how do we make it equitable and accessible for everybody? Another issue that I would say that's really important is to also take out what are some of the biggest gaps that we need to close. What I've been hearing from an organization called the Unity Council here and that serves mostly the fruit belt, we have families that have mixed status. So we have students who are not even, they have families who may be undocumented, or they themselves may be undocumented, who are also afraid to fill out that form to get that free Wi-Fi from the provider. And so now they are not even getting the information. They have to go to their cousins or aunt's house to be able to do that. But now with the COVID, we know that that's another health issue. So now this lack of access across an inequitable access is now also a public health issue. And so we definitely have to look at it from a three-pronged approach: policy, funding, and strategic partnerships.
Absolutely. And talking about jobs, right? Like you were talking about like how now we're moving, everybody that can will be working from home. Are we equipped? What are the new jobs? What's the future of work? My husband runs the Edelman Trust Barometer, and I've seen, like in the latest editions that they are doing with COVID-19, that automation was already an incredible fear before COVID. No, just after COVID, everybody's like, that's it, right? Like this is going to accelerate, absolutely. Like right now, they're going to, not only companies are going to run through that faster, and that is going to be a deeper issue. And that's why I want to ask you, Christian and Lili, how do we move the Latinx community to new jobs in these times that we're working from home, when working from home might not be an option?
I would start just also reiterating with that point, Claudia, that the Latinx are currently overrepresented in the industries that are going to be impacted by automation, according to McKinsey study. And so it's important that we are understanding the basic digital skills. And the great thing about it is that there are organizations that are doing it, but we need a larger scale. So for example, I'll highlight two organizations. Out in Watsonville, we have Digital Nest, that's providing not only the space that is providing access, but also opportunity for the local youth and also adults to be able to cross the digital divide, learn how to code, be able to get education, be able to get into their first job that allows them to get a taste of what it's like. And we need more of that. There's another organization called Bitwise that's out in Fresno that's been there for 5 years and now has been expanding to different cities, that is specifically helping talent wherever they're at, giving them the opportunity to learn the basics, so then that way they can enter the tech economy and build a career and an upper mobility. I think the part that's going to be really, really interesting here are going to be the jobs that people didn't think there was enough tech, or they didn't think that it could apply to them. I think we're going to be seeing a big shift in telemedicine. We're going to need a lot of bilingual talent to be able to reach the hardest to reach communities. There's going to be an opportunity to take a look at what needed that investment to be more digital, and what does that experience look like? And we need our community to be part of that design process. So then that way we're represented, that is done right, and that there's also a trust factor with all of these issues. But I'm going to let Christian jump right in here to also provide his perspective.
Well, thank you so much, Lili. So really, I've actually learned so much in these last couple of minutes from you. So just one other thing as to why like the digital divide is so pressing for the Latino community. So what I do at the Latino Community Foundation, I lead all of our work around the 2020 census. And so hopefully you may have seen a couple ads here and there about the census. This happens every 10 years in our country, where we just count, right? We say that we live here, and based on that count, that's how we get political representation and federal dollars back for our community. A particular challenge that has been happening going into the census is the fact that the Census Bureau has actually pushed for basically all of America to fill out this questionnaire online, right? And so, if you're a Latino that lives in rural California or rural Texas or even Puerto Rico, right? Just given everything that's happened over there, it's like, how can you expect to fill out this form, right, when you don't have a computer, when you don't have broadband, when you don't have access to a library to fill this out, right? And so the implications of that, just to share with you some numbers, when we fill out the census, like that's how the federal government distributes $1.5 trillion for things like healthcare, for schools, for roads, right? In the context of COVID-19, right? You look at the communities that are hardest hit by COVID-19, like those are the same hospitals that need those same resources, right? This is actually something where Latinos can actually take charge and make sure that we're bringing back those dollars that, quite frankly, rightly and constitutionally belong to us because we've already paid that into the system, right? It's just a matter of us filling out this form. On the political representation piece, I mean, it's interesting because you may have seen headlines here and there about the CARES Act, the Paycheck Protection Program, and all these other things that are going on in Congress. When we fill out the census, that's how we make sure that we have a representative negotiating for these bills on our behalf as a community, right? And so you can imagine if there's a huge undercount of Latinos in this next census, we may have one less voice, two less voices negotiating on our behalf to make sure that these big bills that Congress is debating right now, and for the next couple of years, to be quite frank with you, we need to make sure that there is someone fighting for us, and filling out the census is exactly how we get that done. And so like Lili was mentioning, we need to figure out how to close the digital divide fast, right? Because the census ends at the end of October. And once the results are locked in, they're locked in for the next 10 years. There are no do-overs, right? So between now and the end of October, we need to make sure that we're pushing people to not only fill out the census online if they can, right? But also, it's not just online. People can still fill it out over phone or by paper. But I mean, it should be no excuse as to why we couldn't, at least in a very creative ways, seek to close that digital divide right now for Latinos.
And talking about your creative ways of thinking and innovation, and just to mention to Lili and to you before, by the way, Kristen, it's so great to meet you. I love what you guys are doing. I want to partner with you. I'm so glad that Lili brought you in. I knew about you, so it's great to meet you finally here. But Lili, on tech, again, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer, tech as an industry has gone from being trusted here to being trusted here. So I think that there's a huge opportunity out there. The other thing that has changed dramatically since COVID is Spanish as a language, as the relevance, because we're going to comfort and we're going to home and we're going to multi-generational homes. So I think that language will be incredibly important. But just to Christian's point about creativity, I have a proposal to make to both of you, which is we're inviting everyone to take action towards Hispanics that have been affected by COVID-19 on one single day. Pretty much, like the Giving Tuesday for many people in Thanksgiving, and that is happening tomorrow. But for us, for Hispanics only, focusing on us celebrating, raising awareness of how disproportionately we are affected, is raising awareness of the issue. So we would love to invite you to be part of this activation, to take part of the day of action. The way that we want to do it is by city, by hubs, so that we can have, different people doing different things. We started with a pilot project in south of Texas, and today is the sixth day, since we started the activation of the day of action, and we are going to distribute 100,000 despensas, 100,000 grocery packages to people. And here's a caveat. You can get your basket of, onions and meat and so on that we're giving if you registered for the census. So that's actually how we're doing it. We would like to invite everybody to take action that one day. Whether it's fundraising to pay bills, whether it's fundraising to get despensas, whether it's taking action and volunteering for someone else. But I think that we should partner, and I would love to to get a yes from both of you, so that we can do something together in California on that one day that brings that creative thinking and those partnerships together by helping community, but also at the same time by getting people to register to the census, to participate in the census.
Yeah. I'm for it.
Yeah, I think that the opportunity that I see in all of these challenges, and maybe this is the silver lining, it is innovation. This is the part where our communities have to bring their most creative juices to find different ways to engage each other, keep each other informed. One of the big issues and concerns is the disinformation that's currently taking place. And social media is being used, and most of the folks are using an Instagram. They're using Twitter and whatnot, and even Facebook, but this is really an opportunity to use those channels to better educate for the ones that have access. And for the ones that don't have access, we really have to rely on organizations on the ground with the phone, going back to flyers, being able to just have the trust. But there's also an opportunity for technology there, tech space. There's just so many different ways that I think that it's really just an opportunity for everybody now in the US, especially our Latinx community, to know that they are tech. They are already part of tech. This isn't trying to break into tech. We're in a new digital world, and this is our new reality, and we're going to make it through together with education, investment, and partnerships.
There you go. Christian, how do we do that? How do you use tech and non-tech to get people to get into census?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating question. Yeah, because I mean, ever since COVID-19 has happened, it's just become increasingly clear to me that the digital divide was always a choice, you know, in the sense that you look at how tech has reacted since this crisis has happened. In the state of California, I mean, Google like partnered with our governor's office to distribute like these Chromebooks across the state, right? And it was so easy. It was just like that to get people laptops, right? So I think what needs to happen now, especially for things like census, and even going beyond that, right? I mean, the November election, there's the whole redistricting process that happens across America next year where we redraw the lines. You know, we need to make sure that, yes, let's get people the tools that they need, the laptops, the hotspots, and everything else. But like, if you want to talk about how to get Latinos back to work, let them be the same ones that actually build the broadband infrastructure that really does need to exist in our communities. Those are high-paying jobs, right? And it's also an opportunity to invest in the education of our community to make sure that they get those high-paying jobs, right? That can be done right now, and it can actually be done at the community college level. And so if you're a Latino that may have just lost their job right now, it's like, you know, we need to be forming partnerships and investments to actually move Latinos to get these digital skills and education, and then placing them on something that essentially America is long overdue in actually creating. Because if you look at, you know, around the time of the Great Depression and World War II, you know, this country made big investments. We shot for the stars, right? Like, we need to do that again, and it has to go through Latinos. And I think by really building a whole new broadband infrastructure with and for Latinos, like, I think that's the key right there.
And just before we close and we give you a final word for final thoughts, what are, like, if I am listening to this, I belong to one organization, you know, like I'm a member of any of the Hispanic Star Alliance organizations, and I hear this, where do I go to get training on digital skills? Give me 3 to 5 sources where I can go right now and get myself, you know, like if I lost my job or if my employer is not giving me that, what are the type of skills that I should be looking at, and what are the places that are good for the Hispanic community now?
I can share a few. So for example, there's a program that very, very similar to what Christian was mentioning, Tech Exchange. So for example, it's providing an opportunity to get the local talent to learn how to refurbish some of the laptops and desktops and learn about IT in general, and then deploying that to the families in the local community. So it's like a circular economy. So there's definitely that opportunity where you're closing the gap of access while increasing also local jobs. So definitely check out techexchange.org. There's different many ways to get there. There's also, like I mentioned, Digital Nest that's doing a lot of this classroom work for Latinx youth. There's Bitwise that's out in Fresno. They also have a program called Onward California and Onward US that's aggregating a lot of resources. So there's definitely ways to get plugged in. There's also a lot of new tools out there. There's a lot of free classes everybody's providing now because they want everybody to learn. So I would highly even recommend Free Fridays at General Assembly, where you can learn the basics from Excel to your first line of code as well.
Yeah, and General Assembly is willing to do a partnership with Hispanic so that we can cover that. And for all of you listening, the day of action, 21 May, if you belong to an ERG, an employee resource group, or a business resource group, you want to fundraise and have your organization match so that we can pay scholarships for those programs, so that we can get more people into these types of programs to be educated, to be upskilled, to be reskilled into digital and bridge that digital divide. Christian, Lili, give me your final words, your final thoughts, and recommendations for the community. Final message.
Go, Christian. Let you go first.
Okay. Just final thoughts. Like I mentioned, I mean, yes, the census is about power and money, right? But it's so much more than that. I think in the context of COVID-19, like, I mean, this is an opportunity for our community to fight back, right? It's not just us filling out a form and getting these things back for us. It's about us proclaiming our existence and our right to be here, right? I think that's very critical for Latinos to say, like, I belong here. We are the essential workers, right? And one way or another, you cannot deny us our right to political representation of federal dollars, right? So I encourage you to go to our website, latinocf.org/census, because we have more information for you to look at and to share with all of your networks.
And for my end, I would just remind everybody the urgency of the times that we're in. We're about to make decisions for the next generation. This is the largest mobilization in civic action that we see in 10 years, right? Every decade this happens. But with the COVID this year, this is really once in a lifetime generational time for systemic change. And it requires all of us to show up at the table. As an individual, especially for the digital divide, I urge you to take a look. What is your school district doing? What are your council members' policy in these issues? A lot of our communities got left behind because nobody was representing them. So I encourage people to actually take a look at this time to join civic action. Take a look at what is your state doing? What is their plan for this? If they have no plan, tell them to check out California. Newsom has a great plan that he just unveiled for 2021 Broadband for All. And if you're also at the federal level, what are we doing on the other side? So this is a call to action to all the leaders of the companies, the organizations. We can close this year. We just need all of us to show up at the table. We need significant investments, not just a one-time donation, but multi-year level of investment in the equipment to get us to the next level, but also in the education and sustaining all of us. I really, really would like to ask for that. And one more thing, for the folks who are the data, the policy, we need more data. We need to see more of this disaggregated data of how it's impacting our communities, both that are also undocumented families, because their stories are also not being told or covered. And so this gap may be even wider than we think. So I just really encourage all of us to all hands on deck, and let's close this for once and for all.
That's fantastic. Lili Gangas, Chief Technology Community Officer of the Kapor Center for Social Impact, and Christian Arana, Policy Director of the Latino Community Foundation. Thank you so very much for being here today, for what you're doing, and for accepting to partner to do something together on May 21 for the Day of Action. I really want to make sure that we, the World Human Foundation with the Hispanic Star Platform, can support the efforts that you're leading and moving forward. And so if there's anything that we can do to convene, facilitate, we will do with you. So looking forward to making sure that this is a test for us to make sure that we come out stronger, but we all need to be counted. So let's work on that. Thank you so very much for being here today.
Thank you.